Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I am your host, Benedikt, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen-Flood. How are you, Malcolm?
Hey, Benny. I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Still good.
Amazing.
It's one of these weird 2 episodes in a row days where I don't know how to answer this question the second time around.
Yeah. Listeners, I'm leaving for like a month, essentially. And so we're trying to stock up on episodes before I head out of town. I'm unfortunately not allowed to say what project I'm heading out of town on. But yeah, I'm going to be on the road for about a month. And we've got a couple episodes in the bank. You might have one that's just Benny or so. We'll see how it all plays out. But don't worry, there's going to be content. Don't sweat it. And I'll be back.
Definitely. You'll be back for sure. And I look forward to that. So today we're going to be talking about something that I notice a lot when I do coaching calls with people. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about why your audio knowledge could be the reason for why your records don't sound great. And
Dun, dun, dun.
yes, exactly. That's the sound that was playing in my head while I was saying that, actually. Yeah, totally. So yeah, it could really be the case. And it could really be the reason or part of the problem. And I see that all the time with people that I do coaching calls with, that they actually know quite a bit, but sometimes they know more than I do about certain parts of the production, or overall sometimes even. But for whatever reason, they can't make great sounding records. And if you want to jump on a call like that with me, by the way, if you want to have a completely free coaching call, a free feedback call, you can go to theselfrecordingband.com/call, and we can do a 1-hour coaching session completely for free to figure out where you are right now, where you want to be, and whether or not I can help you get there. And I'm also, of course, going to help you on the spot, give you feedback and all of that. So yeah, it's completely free. Go to theselfrecordingband.com/call and let's hang. Yeah, and what I notice on these calls quite a bit is that the knowledge is often not the problem. It's sometimes, like, not having the knowledge is not the problem. Sometimes knowing too much about a certain thing can be the problem because people are focusing on the wrong things, or they are not open to new ideas anymore sometimes. So yeah, I've worked with a lot of people who know a lot, like really a lot, often more than I do. And you got to know that I'm obsessed with learning, and I've been learning every day for more than a decade now. Like, it's really, it's a problem for myself too. But still, there are people out there who know a lot more than I do, yet their records still don't sound great often. And I want to explore the reasons or potential reasons for this today.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I feel like often for musicians, there's 2 camps. There's like the extremely technical person, and then there's the extremely just creative, in the moment kind of person. And you would think that in a very technical job, such as recording great sounding audio, like engineering audio is really what it comes down to. You would think the technical person would be at a huge advantage, but it can so easily get in their way and actually create, like, it'd be totally detrimental to what they're trying to create. And it's not unusual for, especially in the beginner stages, for the creative people I see sending me demos to have way better results. They're not even thinking about it. They're just throwing a mic in front of something and clicking record and trying to nail the performance. And that, alone is like, oh, you don't have it's simple, but it worked kind of thing. Opposed to like them. A technical person might not even get to record it. They might be messaging me about like, hey, do you think I should try this mic configuration, and is it worth me renting these better mics? It's like there's so many obstacles that knowledge can put in front of you. So we're talking about stuff like that today, and not just the stuff that stops you from recording, but the stuff that might not push the needle as far as you think while you're recording.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the thing is, we don't want you to be held back by something that could actually be a huge advantage. Like, it's good to know things. Like, knowledge is always great, right? So it is important, but it can be detrimental to your success as an engineer, producer, or DIY musician, especially, and that's something I really want to talk about also later, is especially when combined with a certain mindset, because the knowledge oftentimes is just a problem because people refuse to take in other information, other opinions, or like get out of their comfort zone, or, we get to that. But like, it's oftentimes the combination of knowledge and a certain mindset that gets in the way of people. And so let's maybe start by some examples just to let people know what could happen. And then we go through the tactical things like what you can do. To me, the one thing that comes to mind, for example, where I just see that happen in real life all the time is when people ask for advice on a forum, for example, or even in our community, sometimes this has happened, but in other places as well. It's very common when somebody asks for advice, and then people give advice, and it's of course well intended, like they want the best for the person they're helping, and they'll be like, well, I would create this. I would level match. I would EQ match this thing, and I would turn that into an IR, and then I would blend the two, and I would throw in another of this, and they give this crazy explanation of what they would do to try to solve the problem. When maybe the best advice would have just been to either just quickly re-record the thing, or maybe apply a simple EQ move that solves all the problems. But they immediately go to that very complex, technical problem-solving mode, and that might solve the problem, but it's like oftentimes not the right thing to do, and it doesn't sound great after it. It's just repaired in a way, but it might not be the best thing for the song, or but I see this all the time where these two different personalities that you've mentioned, where you can like really see that somebody comes in with a really simple, practical or artistic sort of way of solving the problem, and then another person will take a very, very complex approach, and so this is something where I see that, and I feel like if you are like that with all your decisions when you're producing music, the end result is not going to be really exciting. I think it's going to be totally over processed, and you just make it so complicated for no reason. Sometimes the solution is so simple, and you don't need all the things that you can do in theory in your DAW. You don't need all of those all the time, So
yeah, 100%, 100%. There's almost always like a simpler way, and I think context is everything, and that is something that even listening to us, we're really happy you're here listening to us. But anything you learn from our podcast needs to be put into context in whatever like situation you're in. So we might have our favorite fixes for things, but we have no idea if it's going to apply to the next time you're doing a recording. So you have to kind of like try and figure out what you think is going to work, and really experiment as well, and see if it actually is going to help you in that. Don't assume because it's the solution that it is the solution, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
A really common thing for me is the technical people might, read like 18 articles on how the room mics were set up for when the levee breaks or something, and just like be like, okay, we're going to get like the most massive drum sound ever. And there's like, they send me 6 different pairs of room mics, and they forgot to like, mic the toms or something. Like they just like sacrificed such important stuff because they were focused on these technically like weird and advanced ideas. Like, oh, like we threw a mic in the piano with all of the keys that are in the key of the song taped down so they'll ring. It's like, well, okay, I need a snare mic now. Like I can't make this work. That's not going to do anything for me. So don't get hyper focused on the latest and greatest thing you've read.
Yeah, totally. Same with guitar sounds. If you like, people over obsessed about it's same thing. They read about a mic technique or something, and they're throwing 4 mics at a guitar amp with like rooms and MS and like a pair angled at the cab and whatnot. When just 157 in front of an amp that is the exact right amp with the right setting and the right performance and everything would have totally done it. They focused on all these other things, and the time they spent setting all of this up should have been spent getting the tone right that comes out of the cab, and just putting one mic in front of it and capturing right. We did a whole episode on that, but it's the same as with the drum techniques. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. That's super common as well. You're totally right. And here's something to think about: the more complex the technique you're going for, the more opportunity for mistakes that you're not aware of come into play. Yeah. So with the drums and with really complex guitar setups, that problem usually presents itself in not very solid understanding of phase. So they're like, I did all these cool things, and it's like, well, none of them work together or with anything like that I have to use. So you are like, we don't want to stop you from experimenting, but as always, we really want to stress: get the basics and then experiment. Make sure that the core thing, like if one mic on that guitar cab doesn't sound pretty darn good, you have to get that right before you start adding a bunch of other stuff and getting more technical.
Yes, totally. But I really like the third example that you put here, because those things that we were just talking about, they are, the people know something, they know a technique, or they've read about something, but they also don't know enough so that to in order to be able to apply it correctly. So there's still this element of like not knowing the basics about phase or not knowing this and that. So, but what I really want to talk about also are the people who really know all of these things, like who really know what they're doing, but they still can't make great sounding things. And it might be because they're knowing so much. And the third point here is where if the technical things are so important to you and you know how to technically fix everything, you know everything about frequency and resonances and how to get rid of those things and all the automatic intelligent tools that we have today and all the tools and techniques that there are to fix, quote unquote, fix an audio problem. If you know all of those things and you know how to use them and all of that, but it still doesn't sound great, it's maybe because you're so focused on these technical things and on repairing the recording that you completely fail to, like, for example, you don't pick the better take, as you put it here, the emotional home run with vocals, for example. You don't pick the better take because there's another take that's technically better, for example, or you focus on fixing everything about it and then all the emotion is gone. Maybe that's also super common with guitar tones, and like I have to be careful with that because I really like, quote unquote, fixing guitar tones. Sometimes the guitar tone is aggressive and a little bit like exhausting to listen to, and I try to go in and find all the resonances and make it all even and beautiful and all that. And yeah, you can argue that it's maybe technically better or it's more pleasing sounding or whatnot, but it's like if it's not aggressive anymore, but it's supposed to be aggressive, or if it's not cutting as much anymore, then maybe I should have just taken the less perfect thing and like embrace it, you know? And the overly technical people completely miss that oftentimes. So they know everything about everything, and they know all the tools and techniques, and they enjoy fiddling with the newest tools, and they get really excited about that. But when they're done, the whole song just sometimes it sounds like white noise without any emotion because all the resonances and all the exciting stuff is just gone, and it's all repaired and
yeah, you can make
boring.
things too good for sure.
Yeah.
My example of this, of being overly technical on like in instead of getting the right emotion, is something that I like continually battle with, and it's guitar solos that the bends just don't quite get where they're meant to go. I'm waiting for it to finally reach that resolution note and resolve, and they just like don't quite get it there, and the whole band's like, oh, that was so cool. It's like it's so like uncomfortable, and I'm like, yeah, it's so uncomfortable. Can we please do it again? And like this happens to me all the time, and I know they're right. And like, there's no way everybody's as picky about it as I am, and the rest of the band literally loves it, and they have to convince me. And if for whatever reason, that's always been a struggle of mine. I want to hear it get there, but they're right. They're right. It's totally fine. And after the funny part is, after the fact, when I go back and listen to the song later, I love it. It's just in the moment where I'm focused about them playing in pitch while we're tracking. I'm in that hyper technical, we're going to get a really in tune guitar performance here. And that gets in the way of me judging their solo performances emotionally.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good example. Also, it goes to show that it is a good idea sometimes to just show it to non-musicians or like non-pros. I mean, in this case, they are musicians, but like it's a good indicator when people are in the room who are not audio professionals and they hear something and everybody's like, wow, that's just so amazing, so great, that feels great. They can't tell you why exactly, but they just love it. And that's a good indicator that there's something's right here, even if you think it's wrong, because we hear these things differently. And it's a fine line because it's our job to be more picky about these things, to tell people that something's not in tune and to be able to go in and fix that. So that's part of our job. But, we have to still think and listen like music listeners and fans. And if there's 5 people in the room and they all love it and they love how it feels, so maybe you should think twice whether or not you do anything about it, or you don't want to mess that up. So
absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah. This is you wrote something down, Benny, here that says, don't forget that producing and even engineering and mixing is at least as much art as it is science. And that's so spot on here. And as we know, art is incredibly subjective, and your own opinions are going to shift over time. Nobody listens to what they listened to like when they were 7. I mean, some stuff maybe, but like your taste in music's probably changed, right? Your preference for styles of music and playing and tones have probably all changed as well. I used to think that a Les Paul and the neck pickup was the best way to go, like for like any like metal, whatever. And I don't know what the hell I was thinking about. My tone must have been so terrible. Anybody that saw my band when I was 16, sorry, it must have been a flubby mess. But like it just changes. One day I was like, this sounds so much better if I use my bridge pickup, and it took me forever to get there. And so you just got to roll with the punches a little bit and keep adapting.
Yep, absolutely, totally agreed. Yeah, it's like I really think it's at least as much art. It's even more about the art than, I mean, you can argue producing is definitely more art. Engineering, mixing has a technical aspect to it, but like at the end of the day, it is about making art sound great. It's not like, who cares about the technical stuff? It's made for people who want to listen to the music to feel something, and they don't care about the technical stuff. The technical stuff are just the tools. So I think the whole idea, that whole scientific approach of like, there is a right way to do something and there's a wrong way, and there's a problem and you have to fix it, and that whole idea is kind of weird to me. Although I think I am a pretty logical person, and I like this aspect of my brain in other areas of life where that's helpful. But when it comes to music, I try to not be that way, because I really think that there is very rarely a right or wrong. It's mostly gray. There's more than one approaches in most cases, more than one approach. So you got to be really, you got to approach it like it's art, and you got to be open also to new ideas and to the whole idea that there might be no right way to do something. And a lot of the technical people, they just see or hear a problem and they want to fix it, and they think there is this one definite outcome that it's supposed to be, when that actually doesn't really exist, because it's very subjective, and it's not as simple as that. And and what gets in the way of those types of people sometimes is that, as I said, is that they're not open to new ideas anymore. So they when you think that it's a black or white, right or wrong thing, you tend to think that there's one way to do it, and if somebody else tells you otherwise, you just don't believe it, and that is really, really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a creative thing, and you should always be open to new ideas. You should question yourself all the time and get out of your comfort zone and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just something I see, and that's the problem for a lot of people who think that way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about like a lot of examples,
Yeah.
and whatnot. So like how do they get out of this? What are some solutions, I guess? Best thing for me was always collaboration. I would say, like, working with somebody else and seeing how they do it, and being like, ooh, like, you're not going to deaden up the heck out of the room around that guitar cab. That's my go-to, is like, we're going to eliminate the room on guitar tracking, and then having it be, oh, that was awesome,
Yeah.
what a cool ambience and space around that guitar. That worked just dandy, and it's a new like thing I can pull out of my toolbox when I think that's the right fit. And I was just totally closed off to it before seeing it. That's like one example, right? And I wouldn't have had that without being in the room with somebody doing it the total opposite way from me.
100%. And the reason is why that is so important and so valuable to be able to work with experienced people, with other people in general, is that it's a lot better to have the experience, the real world experience, than to just know a lot without the real experience. So if you seek advice from people who have actually done it, or who are doing it every single day, who record a lot, who have had to solve different problems, you'll notice that they are very intentional about what they do. There is rarely a right or wrong. Like, sometimes they completely deaden everything around the guitar, and sometimes they embrace the ambience. There's no right or wrong. They just know what serves the song, what is better in that moment, and they do whatever is necessary, even if it might be technically wrong. So a lot of people break the rules all the time if it's good for the song, but those are always the people who have a lot of experience and who are very practical, and like, yeah. And it's much better to be teachable and to seek advice than to know it all but never having really done it. That's a pretty, I think that's true, and it's pretty dangerous to have all the theoretical knowledge, but you've never actually had to solve a lot of these problems, so you only think that what you know is actually the right thing to do in this moment. So yeah, go out and collaborate with others for sure, if you can.
100%. Yeah, you'll learn so much.
Yeah, and we've been talking about that before. Sorry, we've been talking about that before we started the episode. That I found it funny how some people who haven't really made a record in their life yet, they know, and again, they are not wrong. They know a lot oftentimes, but they know everything about a certain topic. Or about audio engineering in general. They know, they know everything. And then there are other people who are making great records and who have been doing so for decades. And I've listened to a bunch of podcasts and I've watched videos of like great engineers, producers, where they sometimes don't know a very like seemingly simple, basic thing. And I'm like, how is it possible that this person doesn't know this? This can't be true. But it doesn't seem to matter. They make great records nonetheless. So a lot of times these people don't know it all, but they are still able to make exciting sounding music that just resonates with people. And a lot of the people who claim to know it all, or who actually know it all, or almost all of it, that doesn't mean they make great records,
Yeah, the more you are caring about the technical aspects of things, the less you are caring about how it actually sounds. And that is just simply a fact, because it's not like we can just care 100% about both. There's a sliding scale. The more your attention is drawn towards if the transients are lined up on the two guitars, the less you are thinking about the overall big picture of the song. So there's a lot to be said for telling the technical side of your brain to shut up sometimes and just listen to the whole song. There's so much value in there. And if that is always where you're coming from, like just how does it sound, period, you're going to adapt regardless to if like something is technically wrong. You might not know why, but you are going to still go after it. So it's not like by not thinking technically that you're ignoring problems. You're still going to be listening and solving them, just maybe in different ways.
Yeah, but you're not creating problems for yourself that aren't actually there.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Yeah. So one example I keep thinking about is the whole match EQ thing that comes up a lot, and like with all these, not only match EQ, but all these intelligent tools that we have now, where in theory you could just go and get like import any really good recording of any instrument. You could import that into your DAW or whatever, and then you could match EQ it and make it the same basically when it comes to frequency response, and make yours the same as the good recording. But it still won't sound as good, or the song won't be as good, because you might be able to match EQ your guitar to another guitar or your bass drum or whatever. But if it's not the right thing for your song, and every song is completely different, then it's not, it doesn't help you. So just yeah, exactly. Just because you've technically solved it or you've turned it into something that has worked for somebody else doesn't mean that your song now sounds better. So this is just something that's the danger of all these modern intelligent tools that we have, that in theory, we could just use tools like Golfos or Match EQ and other things, and like all these auto mixing things and master rebalance and whatnot. And we could get something that is in the ballpark of something else, but we completely miss the emotional, what content of whatever we're working on.
Yeah. Yeah. That technical strategy is just not going to serve you, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I would say you should use your tool and your knowledge, because knowledge is still important. I'm again not saying that it's wrong to know all these things. It really helps. You just need to know how to use it, because I think you should use your knowledge as a flexible sort of toolbox, a toolkit, and not as a strict of set rules that you always follow. So keep those things in your back pocket. If you need them, you can reach for them and you can use them, but always be intentional. And don't think when you learned something or you read about something, that you always have to do it that way.
Agreed.
I'd say. Yeah. So the thing is also, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that, is that it's different for everybody. Like everybody has a different, a different thing that they're struggling with maybe. So I think the way to overcome this, if you're the technical person, or if you feel like you know a lot, but your records for some reason still don't resonate with people or still don't sound great, maybe ask yourself what it is that's your problem specifically. So maybe you're relying on meters and numbers a lot when you're mixing, and you think you're doing the correct things, but it doesn't really work. So maybe the fix for you would be to just leave your comfort zone and mix without meters for a while, or don't use an EQ like Pro Q3, but use a console emulation that doesn't show you the graph, so you have to EQ by ear. Maybe use a compressor that doesn't show you the amount of gain reduction, which can be very uncomfortable. Like I'm the type of person, I want to see those things. I believe I can still sort of ignore them when I have to, But if I have to use a compressor that doesn't show me the gain reduction or doesn't show me when compressing starts at all, it gets really hard for me to dial in the right amount of compression. I keep constantly doubting myself when I do that. So I have to do that exercise intentionally all the time, just to force myself to listen more and to read less. So if you're that type of person, maybe mixing without any sort of meters helps you.
Yep.
Whatever makes you leave your comfort zone, I guess. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Malcolm. What are other things that you could use as like when it comes to new approaches or ability to take risks? Like,
yeah, I mean, like limiting. I'm actually really into the idea of like limiting for creative results. Like even down to songwriting. Like, okay, we're gonna write a song, but we're only allowed to use these 2 chords. How the hell? Like, it's gonna be tricky, right? And it's gonna force you into new places that aren't as comfortable out of your habits, right? So the equivalent in engineering would be like you guitarist with 4 mics on your cab. You have one. You only have one. You have to come up with your tone with one. It's probably going to yield a really good positive result for you if you just you'll learn quicker because you're listening to one thing at a time and experimenting with it and trying to make it do what you wanted all of those other microphones to do. So limit what you have available. And in the DAW, we have so much available, so many options.
Limit yourself to stock plugins, maybe, could be a thing. Like try to mix a song I haven't told you about this, but in one of our future Mixes Unpacked editions, when we do those again, I plan on doing one where I intentionally mix a song with only the stock plugins. I want to see like where that goes. Like I want to find something. I'm going to do a second mix. Like it's maybe not going to be the official release or something, but I try to do a second mix and see how close I can get with just the stock plugins.
Oh, very cool.
Something like that. I plan on doing something because it's more relatable to our audience, I think. And I want to challenge myself from time to time. And I'm pretty sure it's doable. Like, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. I mean, I think there's a lot in there, and it's really all about your mindset and kind of challenging your existing beliefs. And of course, always just being honest of what you think you're struggling with, and maybe it is your technical brain that is causing the obstacles in your way.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that I do a lot with the people that I'm coaching, actually, that's also that made me think of that when you said limit yourself to certain things. An exercise that I do a lot is that I break down the mixing process into different phases, and I make people make a first mix of what they're trying to mix, where they are just allowed to use volume and panning, nothing else, and they have to get the best mix possible over to me. That's the first exercise, and people are always surprised by how far they can actually get. Like automation is allowed too, so they can automate, they can use volume and pans, but nothing else. And it's like they are surprised by how good the things can sound if you just do that, and how important balancing actually is, for example. And then the next step could be limit yourself to only sort of corrective EQ moves. So whenever you have your balance now, then whenever something is like masking something else or standing out to you as like annoying, remove that, but don't do anything else. Use just the stock EQ, use some filtering, get rid of annoying stuff again, and rebalance. And then that's the thing. And then in the next step, we focus on sweetening EQ and then we introduce compression and other things. And with doing an exercise like that, you're forced to pay more attention to those basics and not start with the very advanced stuff right away. And oftentimes the result is that all of the individual elements of the mix keep their original sort of vibe and their size and everything to it. Because what happens when people start right away with like throwing all they have at a source, things tend to get smaller real quick or overprocessed, or the original vibe is gone. And if you're very careful like that and only limit yourself to the basics for a while, then you can keep the original size and impact of it for longer, or ideally to the end. So there's that. Maybe you can do an exercise like that with your own music, and you'll be surprised by how far you can take it without doing complex things oftentimes.
Totally. Yeah. Another limiting variable could be time. Only give yourself like an hour to get your guitar down. You can't get finicky and start fiddling with different options and pulling in different cabs, driving to your friend's house to grab a different amp or whatever. Like, you just got to make it work. You can always redo this stuff, right? So just try and work with what you have and make it as good as you can. And you're going to have to get creative rather than technical.
Absolutely. And now there's the a complete other side to this as well that I want to quickly touch on, which is the whole mindset thing that can get in your way in other ways too. So because some people really know a lot, and maybe they even know how to apply things, and maybe they can even make things sound good, or but they're still not getting ahead, or their records still they don't get to find the right people to work with them on their records. So maybe they are limiting themselves there. And the reason could be, if you know a lot and you constantly let everybody know that you know a lot, and you're always the person suggesting all the complex solutions, and you insist on your way of doing it, and there's only this right approach and stuff, people are likely not going to like to work, like not going to want to work with you maybe, or collaborate with you. So people just don't like know-it-alls. And the type of person who is like that on like online forums, or these people,
maybe they have a podcast where they weekly just talk about it for about an hour at a time, like 116 episodes later.
Exactly.
could be a German or a Canadian, could be
exactly. If you're that type of person, stop that right now. No. But like, I mean, but I think we can say that we are very open for like criticism and like other ideas, and but like being a know-it-all, where if we were here every week telling you this is how you do it, and there's no other way, and we don't care about what you think, and it's like not about your song, it's just about doing this right thing, and for like that, not a lot of people would listen probably, and it's like, because there is no, as we said, like there is no one way of doing things. And if you're that type of person and you approach all your recordings that way, then people will not want to work with you and collaborate with you. So that could get in your way as well. Like people just don't like know-it-alls, and you just have to stay open. So keep that in mind when you're wanting to collaborate with others, I think.
Yeah, it's a great point. You have to be open to learning from people that know less than you, because even if they know less than you, they know something that you don't know. There's so much out there. And there's only two universal truths really, and it's like you should be nice to people, and you need new guitar strings when you record. That's really it. Oh, and I think we're adding record a DI to that as well.
Yeah,
we're up
absolutely.
To 3 now.
I wasn't prepared for that one. I really didn't see that one coming. Awesome. Yeah, totally. But you're so right. So it was the no, you're totally right. So and the like proof of all of that, I also want to put that out real quick, is that in our industry, in the music industry, when you want to make that your job, when you want to engineer, produce for a living, and let's say you're not doing what I did and you're just stupid and you jump right into it without working your way up, sort of. I mean, you can do that. It's not always stupid, but like, there would have been a quicker way of doing it than just saying I'm an engineer now, like I did, and then struggling for 5 years. So, but like if you want to do it in a smarter way, which is working with other people earlier, trying to get to get to work at different studios, learning from other people, and all of that. So if you're trying to, I think there is still, even though there are not as many big studios anymore, there is still the opportunity to be an intern for a while, or to assist somebody, or to be helpful, valuable in any way to somebody, and they will in exchange show you things. So there is still ways of collaborating with other people, and I think you should absolutely do that. And what I wanted to say is, in our industry, if you want to do something like that, if you want to work under somebody or learn from somebody, or be an intern, or be an engineer or runner or whatever for somebody else, a degree or any like formal or theoretical type of education usually means nothing. It like really doesn't. Sometimes it helps, but most people that I know, myself included, we don't care about that when we like hire people or let people help us with things like that. It's it's all about, to us, it's all about what comes out of the speakers at the end of the day, and whether or not it makes people feel something. And when we work with somebody, it's all about them being open and teachable, and so they can adapt and learn a lot and quickly, and so that they get the whole idea. And like nobody cares about your degree or about the theoretical knowledge. Really, it's about being good around people. It's about having the people skills. It's about constantly learning and adapting. Being teachable is more important than knowing it all, as I said. And this is just proof for all of what we said in this episode. I think that this whole industry works like that. Mm-hmm. That this is also the reason why so many graduates of like audio schools struggle to make it a career, because they maybe they know a lot if they've done well there and really learned a lot, which not all of them do. But even if they do that, they often struggle to turn this into their career, because the knowledge is not what it's all about. It's about being able to learn, being teachable, being good with other people, and getting the idea that it's about art and the emotional impact that it has on people. And only if you get that, and if you have these types of qualities, you are valuable to somebody else whose goal is to make music that makes somebody feel something. So it just proves that this is true, and that the people who know the most are not necessarily the ones who make the best records and the most impactful ones.
100%. Yeah. You'll have some humbling moments along the way, which will remind you of this episode, and that's a good thing.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I don't know about you, Malcolm. Maybe that's something I want to a way of ending this episode. Again, we talked a lot about Thomas, for example, the amazing dude who is editing this podcast. It's his birthday today, actually. I completely forgot
happy
about
birthday,
that. So
Thomas.
happy birthday, Thomas.
You're a legend.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've called him today, but I wanted to mention it on the show as well. So, for example, Thomas, he did go to an audio school and learn there, and he had some knowledge. But when he approached me about whether or not he could be an intern for a while, I didn't ask any of those. I didn't care about the audio knowledge, basically. And I've never taken on like an intern before. I've never done that because like all the people who ever reached out to me were just immediate no's. Like I just couldn't see myself working with those people. And when Thomas approached me, it was not his audio skills. I didn't hear any of his productions at first, or I didn't ask about his audio skills, and he had them for sure. But like what fascinated me and was what made me want to work with him was the way he approached me, the way he immediately showed that he was willing to learn and to put in the work, and he was curious and he was open. And I just knew that even if that dude would know nothing right now, within a short amount of time, he would know enough so that he could help me. And he understood what this was all about, what I was trying to do with my mixing business and also the self-recording band. And so all of these skills were much more important to me. And I didn't care about at all, like about what he knew at this point. So that's just my personal story when it comes to that. And he could have impressed me with technical things and I wouldn't have cared. And other people before him maybe knew more, but I didn't let them be an intern.
Totally. Same story with my assistant editor, Stacy. I went looking for somebody that uses Pro Tools and the same software I use for like vocal editing and stuff like that. Stacy checked none of those boxes. Doesn't use Pro Tools, doesn't have any of the software I use, but he came up with solutions for all of those problems, and immediately was like, well, here's how I can get around that and still get you what you need. I can learn that software. I can, it was just like, none of these are problems. They're just obstacles for me to figure out and then get the job done. And it was like, yeah, you're the person, you're hired. So that attitude goes so far, and like, thinking about it, he learned some new skills along the way and got paid for it because he was willing to. It's like, that's awesome.
Yeah, same thing here. Like Thomas is not an intern now. He left that sort of thing long ago. Like he came to me in late 2019, and now he's just I don't even call him assistant anymore. He's just an engineer that I partner with who helps with like all sorts of projects that we do now. Yeah. He started as an engineer, but we've been working for 2.5 years now together, and it's going great. And yeah, he pretty quickly got paid for all of that. So yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Same thing.
Amazing. Yeah, assistant's the wrong word. We got to just figure out how to get rid of that, because Stacy's not my assistant at all. He just does like the job of the assistant editor. I hate the word. He's just an editor. He's just doing editing jobs that I'm not doing. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, I brought that up at some point to Thomas, and I was like, "Hey, I keep calling you assistant, and it doesn't feel right." And he's like, "I don't mind. Like it's not less valuable. Like being an assistant is not it's like a valuable thing." And I'm like, yeah, but I like don't want to do that anymore for some reason. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but I feel like it's just a partnership at this point. And so, yeah. As I said, FitFo is the thing, the skill, like figure it the fuck out. If you can do that, then
your life will be better.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I hope this was a helpful episode. I was rambling again. That always happens with these types of episodes when I get really passionate about something and it's not something really practical, but like a big picture thing like that. It's always hard to describe that, but I think I hope we got the point across. And I hope that you keep learning and that you still believe that knowledge is important, but don't let it get in the way of the art, of the creativity. Break the rules. focus on the song, do what serves the song. All these things are so much more important. Be open, don't be a know-it-all. Like, that's the whole takeaway, I think.
Yeah. Don't let this podcast episode stop you from listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Exactly. Totally. All right. Anything you want to add?
No, I think we've got so much in there. Yeah, I hope it was valuable, everyone. Thank you for listening as always.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.